recording. And Sam, are you going to lead us through the agenda?
Yes, so first I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:07 p.m. And with that, let's move to the Pledge of Allegiance, if everyone can stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. And Chris, if you can have your team lead us in the pledge.
Yes, we'll start with Casey.
As a citizen of the world, I will follow Goethe's circle of learning. Curiosity opens my mind, ideas lead to knowledge, responsible choices show respect, cooperation strengthens others, learners are courageous, empathy creates community.
And Biggie.
Ja, als ein Bürger dieser Welt folge ich dem Kreis des Lernens. Neugierig, ideenreich, respektvoll, kooperativ, mutig, empathisch.
Okay. And Scott, could you do our Spanish?
Try my best. Como cuidando del mundo, seguir el círculo del aprendizaje, creatividad, ideas, respeto, colaboración, valor, empatía.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, we'll move to a roll call. Do I lead this or does someone from your team lead this, Chris?
You can, and we just need to just go down name by name.
Great. So Yasir is not with us yet. Frank is also absent. I am here. Pete?
I'm here.
And Katrin?
I'm here.
Great, thanks. We have a quorum to move forward. Next, we'll move to the affirmation of board findings pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E. I move to make this affirmation today. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Pete. Do we need to read this out, Chris, or?
No, it's just stating that in accordance with the guidance from the governor that we are stating that it's safest to be in this environment, doing it virtually.
Excellent, thanks. Everyone in favor, say aye. Aye.
Actually,
Aye.
must go through each name
Oh,
because we're
roll call.
virtual.
Got it.
It's
No
always
problem.
a roll call.
All right, so Pete,
Yes.
Katrin,
Yes.
and I approve as well. So that's approved. Let's move to the next item, which is approval of the agenda as presented. We do have a short modification to the agenda, but let's move to the discussion. I move to approve the agenda. Does anyone second?
I'll second.
I can second. This is
Oh,
Catherine.
okay.
Great. So I move, Katrin seconds. The one change I believe we need on the agenda, Chris, is to remove item B under the consent item, the approval of the special board meeting minutes of March 19th, 2022. Those aren't ready yet, so we'll table that until another meeting.
Yep, and we could just approve those in April.
Great. So with that, taken as a friendly amendment to the agenda, let's go through. Pete, do you approve the agenda?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
Great, I approve as well. Public comment on general items in the board's jurisdiction. Chris, I'll turn this over to you or Casey.
So Casey, do we have any members of the public?
We do. So the public may comment on any item that is on the agenda or any other item that is in the board's jurisdiction. Members of the public who wish to comment during the board meeting may use the raise hand tool on the Zoom platform. Individual comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and the total time for this purpose shall not exceed 30 minutes per meeting. If an interpreter is needed for comments, they will be translated to English, and the time limit shall be 6 minutes. Individuals may speak one time per subject. The Board of Trustees reserves the right to mute or remove a member of the public if comments or actions disrupt the board meeting. Board members are prohibited from responding to or commenting on matters raised by the public that are not on the agenda.
Okay.
And it looks like there is no public comment at this time.
Okay.
Great. So we'll move forward to the consent agenda. Would anyone like to move the consent items for today?
I'll move, sorry.
Thanks, Pete. And we don't need a second on this, so we'll take a roll. And of course, the only consent agenda item there is the approval of the regular board meeting minutes from February 14th, 2022. Pete,
Yes,
Katrin,
Yes.
I approve as well. So let's move to the next part of our agenda, items for information, discussion, and action. The first thing that we have on here is the executive director report. So let's turn it over to Chris.
Perfect. Now let me go from the beginning. All right. Well, thank you. I've got a few items to cover today. And the first of which is just in general, our pandemic response, and keeping you guys up to date on where things stand right now. Outdoor outdoor masking is now optional. And there's the good news is we've had only one new positive test result for students and staff during the past 30 days. And the final bullet is updated and changed to, we have received guidance from LAUSD, which is for indoor masking. They will be changing that no later than Wednesday to make it I'm trying making sure I get their wording right. It's optional, but highly recommended. And so, or sorry, strongly recommended is the wording they use. And so that is where we stand. We've been following those the guidance, and we found that when we switched to outdoor masking several weeks ago, when that was made optional, it in fact didn't really change the habits of most of our students. Most of our students maintained masking indoors, which was required, and outdoors as well. But that is a trend that I think would expect to see in indoors. There's a comfort level that I think a lot of the kids have, as well as staff, and so that's what I would anticipate. I'm sure it will vary by grades and classes and grade levels, but the big thing that we're indicating is to make sure people understand that it is a choice, and that we want to be respectful of choices that people are making. So, any questions on pandemic response? Let me move on then to enrollment update. We know this, our budget has been built on 424, and we're down at 380. We're actually down 2 from last month, but last month we had jumped up to 382 from 377. So we're actually right where 380 was exactly what we had had projected for our year end. So that's right where we're at in terms of our projections. Where those numbers are, you can see the number of enrolled students in that first column that equals 380, and the class sizes that we have as well. And in the very last column, you can see what we had projected in our budget when we did set that up last June. The budget is it's kind of across all grade levels where we've had various drops, some grades more than others. The other bit of information that I wanted to share is added. You can see the lottery applications are listed here, and we have lottery applications close this coming Friday. and we think we're in pretty good shape in terms of our numbers right now. We have 37 TK applications that are already in, and we have 82 kindergarten applications that are already in. We're really looking to have a whole class of TK. That's our hope, and 2 classes of kindergarten. Again, that's our hope. The other classes, as you can see, 17 applications for first grade, and then it kind of drops off, and this is fairly typical. Second grade 7, third grade 9, fourth grade 4, fifth grade 1, which is pretty common that fifth grade is not a time when people shift schools. A nice healthy group of applications for sixth grade. So 20 at sixth grade, 4 at seventh grade, 0 at eighth grade. Again, just like fifth grade, it's not a year where kids tend to make movements. So that those aren't particularly surprising. But we feel like that's a pretty strong spot to be in terms of lottery, that we'll be able to fill spaces that have been a little bit low this year. So that's I think some good information of where we're headed. And tied into that is our where we stand with Prop 39 and facilities, because of course these go hand in hand. We did send our March 1st letter and disputed the preliminary offer that was given to us the month earlier on February 1st. And in that letter, we requested an alternative agreement to maintain our current footprint. So if you recall, last year we were offered 15 regular classrooms, and we asked for 17 regular classrooms, and those we actually asked for 4 additional classrooms. We only received 2. Those classrooms were room 39 and room 31. This year we are asking for the exact same footprint, and we think we can offer a vibrant program with those classes. We have made that formal request for an alt agreement with District West and to Marina Del Rey Middle School. And we have also reached out to Nick Melvoin, asking his office to support our request and to help expedite that. Our hope was that we would have that in place, maybe even prior to lottery, although lottery is coming up very quickly, and so that doesn't seem a realistic hope. We certainly do not want to be in the situation we were in last year, where that agreement wasn't approved until August. To kind of look at other options that are beyond Prop 39, the board on Saturday held a special meeting and met to discuss our strategic plan, but they also talked with from a real estate group called Red Hook about a potential partnership of lease to own private facilities. And the reason why this is particularly interesting, I believe, for us is because this is a group that takes on the risk of when you're out trying to get the entitlements for a particular property to work as a school and get the zoning, and they take the risks out in front. And I know that in the past we've had some issues in years past where we lost some money related to that. So this is on the agenda today, so we can talk about that a little bit more moving forward. Any questions about facilities update or enrollment? Okay.
This is Sam. I do have a
Sure.
question on
Sure.
enrollment. I appreciate having the lottery numbers there. Is there a way you could provide us with information about how that compares to historical years with lottery? Is it where we want to be as a school? Is it the numbers that we were expecting to see?
It is comparable to past years. We've had years with higher numbers. we were concerned early on, we weren't getting some of the early returns, but they've been coming in pretty steadily. So this puts us at pretty much a par. I can get more detailed information though for you as well.
Thanks.
Okay. So this brings us to a very important topic that the board is aware of, but I wanted to make sure it was in my presentation and to make this publicly available and information that is out there. As you may recall, 3 years ago, we received a bill from LA Unified stating that we were receiving a penalty for over allocation, which basically is saying that we were penalized for overestimating our in-district enrollment projections. Now, the way that these work is in-district enrollment projections are made in November, and the following August is when you find out how accurate you were. So it is a relatively difficult thing to do. However, in the years past, going back all the way to 2016 and actually before that, our school had been instructed by the CSD to go out and get as many intent to enroll forms as possible, use all the intent to enroll forms that you're able to get, and that will allow you to get more space. And unfortunately, the issue of over allocation was there, but was told, oh, that doesn't apply. We're not doing that. Well, that changed 3 years ago, and we had to adjust the way we do business with Prop 39 as a result of that. We felt that it was a very unfair penalty that was put on us because it went back 3 years prior, and there were a lot of kind of clerical and procedural errors that were made, but the law stood in LAUSD's favor. So LAUSD was saying we owed the full amount. We were saying we shouldn't know anything, and of course, a settlement means somewhere in between. So in 2019 is when LAUSD began issuing those penalties, and we as a school individually didn't have a lot of leverage, and that's what this was about, is what is the leverage to deal with this. So we joined with a group of charter schools under the guidance of Young Mini and Core, our legal team, to dispute the penalties. And it was a very slow process. It was caught up in the pandemic and slowed down specifically because of that. And just the overall process was we went through dispute resolution, and we went through different stages to try to come to an agreement. And finally, it worked out between the lawyers who are representing multiple schools for the charters and the legal division at LAUSD, and came to an agreement. And that agreement is it covers 5 years of assessed penalties. So it covers the years from 2016-17 up until 2020-21. And in those 5 years, we were assessed over $1 million in penalties, that 1,052,000 number that's there. Our agreement is that we pay basically 30 cents, 30.8 cents on the dollar, which, all things considered, and where this could have gone if it actually went to court and could have gone against us, we could have ended up with the whole penalty, or certainly it could have ended splitting it halfway between, and in addition, the legal costs that would have gone into that. So just from a dollars and cents issue, this made sense. It also made sense because the law did state if you overestimate and don't give those rooms back, a district can give an over allocation penalty. And so that was their argument. And we came back, I think, strongly. And the fact that that we were able to drop that number from 100% to 30% is a good indication. That being said, it's still a huge amount of money, and to pay that all in 1 year would have been a cash flow issue, and it would have really put a bite into our reserves. And fortunately, we were able to negotiate a payment that can run all the way until our renewal happens in 2025. And so we are looking at a 38-month payment, and we pay $8,500 a month during that time. Interestingly, all payments for this over allocation penalty from whatever school it is that's paying it, and in the end, there was something like over 20 schools that had to pay, or school systems that had to pay the penalties. All payments go directly to the co-located campus. And while we don't get to have any direct say in how that money would be spent, we certainly are sharing our opinion that we'd love to see that money put into something that benefits the beautification of the campus. In particular, the lunch area is an area we've asked about, and seeing if things like tables and just a general upgrade of that area of campus could be a focus. Again, we don't have control over that, but it is something that we would push for. So I know the board is well aware of this because we've had closed sessions for a long time about this. However, I wanted to be sure it was clear and transparent how we are settling this out. So any questions on this with regard to the over allocation penalty settlement?
I know I have one. Do other board members have any questions? All right, I see from Pete shaking his head. Katrin, jump in if you do. Chris, one thing for the record, has Goethe's method of projecting in district enrollment changed as a result of this, so we won't be expecting this level of issue in the future?
It's really there's several issues that play into it. That's a great question. The first issue is how we use intent to enroll forms, and whether we go out and get dozens or hundreds of intent to enroll forms, because the numbers of in-district enrollment that were happening in some of our years were in the 500 student level for in-district enrollment, which we've never come close to even remotely, which is part of the issue that was being discussed, and we weren't the only ones who were doing that. So that we've made a switch on, and we have consistently in the past 3 years given numbers that we think are realistic, that could be achieved in terms of our own enrollment. That being said, this current year we're in, we face an issue because we expected, as we see, 424 students, and we are at 380. So there is a potential we do face another penalty because of the current year we're at, because of that loss. We will see, and we're working with with CCSA and other schools as well to try to come up with a better plan for that with the district for the current year. But to get to the point about in-district enrollment, which I think was the crux of your question, we don't have a lot of control over whether someone is coming to us from in-district or whether they're coming to us from out of district. As a charter school, we are required to serve any student in the state of California if they can get here. And get into our school through the lottery. We're required to serve them, whether they're in LA Unified or any other district. With that being said, our number of or percentage of students who are coming from out of district fluctuates between about 20 and 30% of our overall student population. And currently it's unfortunately at the 30% level. So we have about 70% of students who are in district and about 30% that are out of district. So the only way we can affect a change about who we draw in is by changing the way we do the lottery. And the only way to make that change is either through our charter renewal or a change in the in our charter. And why my word is escaping me, so Biggie, you'll help me out. Of
With
the
material revision.
material revision. Sorry, when the word's not there, I can't grab it.
No
I
problem.
appreciate it. So a material revision is the other way in which this could happen. And as a result, we could look to doing a material revision. Unfortunately, material revisions are a much more difficult process since the passage of AB 1505. So it's unclear whether we'd be successful. We would probably be most successful in a charter in our charter renewal, but that has to wait until 2025. So it is something we could definitely look at. It's a great question because it really gets to the crux of the issue. If we didn't have 30% of our kids who are coming from out of district, we would qualify for more spaces than we currently do. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And it's good to hear that for the projections that you were using for the things that you can control, there's been a change in your process. And then there are other parts of this that you can't necessarily control, versus as being who comes and the percentage of how those go. But it sounds like you've made a change in the areas that you can for now. And then the rest of it gets on the docket for, are these things we should change in the future?
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Sorry, I didn't have any questions before, but do we know what proportion of the difference between the 424 and 380 is in district?
Of how many of the kids who left, whether they were in district or out of district, I think it is, I'm going to say offhand, I think it's pretty consistent to that 70-30. We could dive into it a little deeper, but I don't think it's dramatically different, like we're losing all in district kids or we lost all out of district kids. And Biggie, you might have more insight on that.
I think you're right with your estimate. The tendency, I would say, is more in-district students lost. Because people around our school are in-district students. They usually count to LAUSD, and we've lost quite a few students, especially because of living costs are so high and stuff that were right around our area. So I would say possibly some more in-district students, but pretty much the 70-30 will cover it, yeah.
I think it'd be interesting and maybe useful for argument later to keep track of the percentage drop within district to see if that matches the overall drop in LAUSD. And then, there's an argument to be made that this is kind of part of the larger LAUSD trend, and COVID and whatever else is causing LAUSD to lose students. And so we really shouldn't be held accountable for that.
Yeah, I think it's a very logical argument. I'm not sure it'll, I'm not sure logic wins the day.
Well, I know logic very rarely wins the day, but just having some things to throw out more numbers and, when negotiations and people make up formulas, these are all things that then can support these kinds of things that, these kind of equations that get made up to negotiate fines. So that's why it's good to have those numbers.
Appreciate that. Okay, are we ready to move forward? And I will. Just wanted to give you a quick HR update. The open positions that we have currently, we are still actively searching for the MYP Humanities, which affects 6th grade and 8th grade. We currently have our 6th grade covered with one of our regular substitutes, Mrs. C, Peggy Cochran, and then the humanities for 8th grade is an interesting combination of two people you guys know pretty well. One of them is me. And so I am spending 1 hour a day with a group, and we're doing US history. And the other is Mr. Michelson, and he is doing the language arts side. History is my background, language arts is his. And so we are making sure that our 8th grade group is really ready for high school. We felt that given that there's been a different people that have been in there, we wanted to make sure that there was consistency moving forward. We also had sadly a resignation of an instructional aide who's been great with us, Vanessa Mateos, but she had enough of her commute, and she was coming from the far end of the valley, and she got a job that was much closer, and so she left us. And then the last thing that we're working on is constantly trying to find additional substitute teachers. All of this related to HR is an ongoing issue everywhere. The limitations of qualified individuals and those able and interested, it's a very small pool. And so we are consistently looking for substitute teachers and want to add anybody that we can that would be qualified and helpful for our kids. So that's an ongoing job. Okay.
Well, can I just ask?
Sure.
Do teachers be vaccinated?
I'm sorry?
Do substitute teachers, are there vaccination requirements for substitute teachers?
Yes, absolutely. And not just for substitute teachers, but also any of our third-party folks that are on campus. So our exploratories in middle school, our PS arts in kindergarten through 2nd grade, all of our TES folks who work with speech and language and RSP, all of that, everyone is required to be part of the vaccination program that is required by LAUSD. Okay. I'm going to give Biggie a moment to talk a little bit about internal fundraising. We've been doing some, I've shared some of the grants that we have been looking at that are not necessarily what we'd consider internal fundraising, but some of the ones like the educator effectiveness grant that we did, and the multi-tiered systems of support. That was a $50,000 grant that we received, a $75,000 grant for the Educator Effectiveness Fund, and a few others that we've been going after. But internally, we have we are on track for exceeding our budget, and we still have a gala to go, which is being planned. So I'll let Biggie give an update, and we'll share a few numbers with you.
So this is the table that you've seen before, and I'm just updating the numbers for every board meeting. So the annual giving campaign is at this point about $10,000 behind the amount from last year. However, we still have ongoing payments of quite some people who make monthly payments. So we might get pretty close to last year's amount. The matching donations would have been pretty much close to last year's amount. One family unfortunately missed the window that you need to submit the request to your employer in order to get the matching funds. So we couldn't do that for this year, but if there were other donations coming in, there might be some matches still out there. But at this point, I think we're very close to being at the limit with the matching donations. As I said, the employers usually have a specific time frame where you have to submit the request after you've made the donation. Jogathon was extremely successful this year with $20,000 over what the Jogathon brought in last year, but we had it in person. So that was a big difference between previous years when we were on distance learning. Shop for Goethe is also coming close. People do a lot of shopping through Amazon these days, and the amounts that we get from Amazon are nice chunks of money, not huge amounts, but nice every couple of months to get a $700 or $800 check from them. Eat for Goethe, we are also getting close. We just had a 1-week fundraiser at Sharky's. And then for next month, we've already set up Rubio's, where we usually always make between $200 and $400 per one Eat for Goethe outing. So for the end of the school year, it's very likely that we'll meet the amount from last year. House shirts is very much going up and down, because one year we order a bunch of house shirts and then the amount is higher, like you see it this year. Last year we didn't order house shirts because we were on distance learning. Next year we might order again a good bunch, because we will have a number of new students, since we're looking at 2K and 1 TK class. So it always makes sense to do orders when there are a lot of new students, because you stay in the house that you are assigned to for the whole career at Goethe. And a lot of people buy the shirts a little bigger, so they don't need a new one every year. It's only every couple of years. German alumni program is a little smaller this year than last year. We will need to look into the system for next year. We are still doing it as an online class, and we've seen that some people are not participating because they feel like it should be an in-person class. But since the beginning of the school year, we didn't really know how it would work out with students that come from other schools and with vaccination mandates or testing mandates and all that. It seemed very difficult to do it as an in-person class on campus. But we've heard multiple times now that it would be a good thing to do it in person, and then we might have more students again next year. The grants are really good this year. Chris mentioned that we have a lot of grants from federal and state funding that he's working towards. This year, we've again received the grant from the German consulate, which is always 15,000 euros. And it depends on the exchange rate on how much this turns out to be. This year, it was, except for $600, about the same as it was last year. There were years where it turned out to be almost $20,000. And there were years where it was only $15,000 when the exchange rate was really bad. But we have two other grants that we were awarded, which is the Connectivity Fund, where we applied to buy Chromebooks. And we had budgeted for Chromebooks before we knew we would have these grants, which means that will take some burden off the budget, because we can pay for the Chromebooks that we budgeted for with those grants. And we got both grants awarded. There was a first round, and when not all available funds were given to schools because there weren't enough applications. They opened it up for a second round, and we were lucky to get a second round of funding out of the available funds. And then you see Goethe cafes. So we have started doing Goethe cafes again, not in the way that we used to do them every Friday morning, but we are able to do 4 per year with the permission of LAUSD. And one of them, as you see, makes good money. The other one that we've done so far was combined with the jogathon and is included in the jogathon amount. And it was about the same number. So for one day, morning and afternoon cafe, plus obviously we have a few volunteers who prepare sack lunches for students that are pre-sold and who prepare salads and soups and all sorts of things that you can pre-order and pay for. So it's not just the actual Goethe cafe on that day, but it's nice to see that it's an amount, and this times 4 is a nice contribution to our overall fundraising goal. So as Chris mentioned, we had budgeted for $320,000 in fundraising revenue for this year, and we're at this point at 358,000, which I'm expecting to get maybe to 365,000 in the list of the things that you see in front of you here, maybe 370,000. However, what he also mentioned already, we're still planning to do a gala, which hopefully will get us also an amount that brings us close or even over the $400,000 mark. And the gala is planned for the month of May. I have looked at one venue already, and I'm looking at a second venue tomorrow. And I'm negotiating with those 2 venues, how the cost structure could look like so that it makes sense with entrance fees, and also then to determine the date so that we can start marketing it to our families, and hopefully also invite a number of alumni parents who always have kept contact and who might be very interested and happy to come to an event like this. And the event is envisioned as something that is like an indoor-outdoor half and half type thing, not with a sit-down dinner, but with food that you can eat without knife and fork, basically. Obviously, good drinks, obviously dancing, and a live auction piece. The silent auction piece will keep off the gala and try to do it online. I think that's about it. If there are questions, please feel free to ask.
Okay, thank you, Biggie. All right, then the very last thing that I have is I wanted to give an update on where things stand with an investment we made in the fall towards creating a system that we can be more using data in a way that's thoughtful and that is available to us at our fingertips as we need to make decisions, as opposed to the data becoming the focus of trying to dig through and find it. And by the time you find it, it's already out of date for the question you have at hand. So we went into our student information system, PowerSchool, and added a program called Unified Insights. This was initially a program that was outside of PowerSchool called Who Knew It, and they had recently acquired it. So we have been putting this into place. And I'll be honest, it didn't go as quickly or as smoothly as I had hoped. I actually had to raise a couple levels in PowerSchool and make sure that we're being implemented. I think it was we were on the sort of the bleeding edge of this program coming into PowerSchool, and so that didn't help us in terms of speed. But I wanted to give the board a sense of what it is we're going to be able to do internally moving forward. And basically, it's getting all data available in one place, including CAS, BELPAC, iReady, attendance, enrollment, and then pulling out what are some of the exclusive things that we have. So trying to be able to pull out information about our German language assessments, which is something that's not in place yet and we're working on, and IB grade analysis at the elementary level in particular is something we want to be able to do, and that is a work in progress. We also, student behavior tracking is the other one that's a work in progress. So I want to give you a sense of what is possible. And so I'm going to, this is not for the purpose of looking at, let me see here. Okay. This is the program. Okay, are you guys able to see that? This is embedded within our student information system. So it's already there. We haven't rolled it out yet to teachers or even administration in terms of, we've just been trying to make sure that the data in it is accurate data and that it makes sense. But I want to give you an idea now of some of the things that we're able to do. Of course, what you're seeing here is little demographic information. This is straight out of PowerSchool, so but gives us an overview of what kids we're serving. And this is an example of a heat map of actually where they live, which is an important piece as we talk about real estate and different pieces. We can track exactly where our students are. We'll start. Oh, timed out. Sorry about that. Just a moment. Try that again. So being able to see what are our, where are our students at? What are the totals by demographic? We can look over time and see about where our what our enrollment has changed over time. We can look at ethnicity and look at our diversity levels and where things are increasing over time, decreasing over time. We can see those trends. This is information we've never had before. And students that are in particular grades, we can look at SPED enrollment over the years and compare that and see where things are at. So a number of pieces on the enrollment side, information we've never had before. In the same way, attendance. A couple of important bits of information for us is always that attendance levels and how we're doing for the entire year, listed over here at 9606, is where we currently stand for the year in PowerSchool as of today, which gives us a full percentage point above where we're budgeted, which was at 95%. You can see the last 30 days, and keeping in mind the last 5 days, independent study hasn't been counted for a lot of the ones that are in there. So those numbers will tend to go up over time. But you can see attendance. We're also able to see how students are doing. We can look at it by race. We can look at it by ethnicity, absent type. We can also look over multiple years and see what type of attendance we have been doing. We can also look specifically at chronic absences, and this is something that allows us to also take a look at where our students are coming from, and is what some of those factors might be that are causing chronic tardiness. And we can break it down. We can look at it by grade level. We can look at it by the ones who are nearly chronic or trending that way, or who aren't having issues at all, or the ones who are actually hit the chronically absent levels. So a number of things that are available to us now that were not available before. I mentioned behavior is one that is, that's most of the pieces in here have to do with suspensions, and we don't really have too many suspensions. So we're going to redo this piece related to what we call log entries, but that's a work in progress. So we hope to bring that piece on next year. Academics is, of course, at the heart of what we want to do, and analyzing our grades that we give. Now, this particular section is analyzing grades in the levels A, B, C, D, F grades, and we only give those in our middle school. So this is really an analysis of our middle school grade giving, and we can look at a comparison, for instance, last year to this year. And you can see at distance learning, there was a lot more struggle in terms of getting work completed and doing well in class, as opposed to this year that you can see. So these would be from the most recent grades, which were at the semester. So middle school results can also be looked at across different subjects. In fact, we can look at the core subjects and get a sense of in English language arts, what do we see happening with different grades there, looking at math and how are things at the different grade levels there. So this is discussion that can happen at the teacher level. And taking a look. Now, I won't click on any of these, but this is live right now. If I did, I'd be getting the list of who those kids are. I won't do that, obviously, because we're in a public meeting. But that is something that is now available to us that hadn't been before. And as I said, we haven't rolled this out yet with our teachers because we're still verifying that the data is accurate and making sure it's ready to go. We want to be able to trust the data. But of course, a very important piece are the testing that we have to do. And as you guys are aware, the most recent testing that we have that is CASP is from the year 2018-19. So it is not new information that gives us much in terms of CASP, but you can see where it says no data found under 21-22. We're ready to put that data in there, and we can start making those comparisons once we do the CASP this spring. So that one is an important one, but it's coming. LPAC, this is our English, our testing for English learners. And this gives us an overview of our English learners and their percentages of how they're doing on this particular test. And we can break this down into the parts of the LPAC, the oral language, the written language, the listening, and so on. So this is something that is, again, now available to us that we'd never had. This is all in one place. And that's the key, is to be able to look through for big trends that we look at from an administrative point of view, also drilling down to which students are we talking about? What are the common issues, and trying to figure that out, but using data for that purpose. The other one that we use extensively is iReady. And of course, iReady has its own system, but we've put that information into Unified Insights so that we can look at the same time we're looking at CASP and we're looking at LPAC, we can also look at iReady. And here's an example of iReady data. It shows the results in the fall and it results in the winter. And currently the spring, that the testing started today. So in a week or two, a few weeks, we'll have that information to look at, and we can see how kids have been progressing. What we'd want to see, obviously, is comparing from fall to winter and seeing decreases in the amount of students that are struggling and seeing increases in the amount of students that are doing well in the green. And we can see the same thing in mathematics, where we're looking at the fall, and now we can see in the spring, and some pretty good results there that are evident in mathematics. As I said, purpose right now is not to dive in and analyze this. I just want to give you guys a sense of what we have available. With that, I'll go ahead and I've talked for a long time, so I'll open it up to any questions that the board might have about Unified Insights.
Any questions from anyone? I see you've joined us, so we'll turn the meeting back over to you in a minute. But Peter, Katrin, anything else?
Yes, I saw Pete unmuted himself as well. Why don't you go first, Pete?
Oh, okay, thank you. So this is all, I mean, this is certainly all potentially very useful. And I guess two things I think would be useful for the board to see would be, one, for someone to create an outline of the specific things that you want to look at, because there's a lot of information here and you could scroll through this forever and not really have anything not anything that promotes any kind of action. And so I think it'd be useful if you, Chris, or somebody said, here are the 6 things that we would really want to focus on because they tell us X, and then based on that we can do Y. So that's one thing. And then I guess what I heard was that this is going to be made available to the teachers, so for their classrooms, is that right?
So teachers would be able to access this through their PowerSchool portal.
Right.
So so they could use it in staff meetings. They could pull information if they're getting ready for an IEP or getting ready for an SST. It's one-stop place where we can pull information from.
So I think would be useful, and I know this year is almost over and this is all just coming online, so probably this is something more for, but we can start and then maybe next year track it a little bit more. But I would like to see the telemetry data for this, which tells us how often it's being used by the teachers, the admin, you, because again, if by the end of next year we see that it's being utilized for like 30 seconds by a teacher and no one else is looking at it, then I'm not sure that it's worthwhile. So I think we want to think about tracking its use, not only what's in it, but actually tracking how much people use this particular tool.
And I fully endorse both the things you just said. You hit the nail on the head with the next step is figuring out, okay, we can do all these things, but what are the ones that are important to us? And that's really, I think, what Yasira had been pushing forward with Goethe exclusive student achievement measures. And so this is all a part of that conversation. This is a big step forward, but we're not there yet. But I wanted to share where we're at.
Or, and one last, sorry, that made me think of, so there's going to be some professional, so I think along with the key things to look at is there going to be some PD for the teachers to help them focus on things and understand what these things mean and what they can do with them. I think that'd be very, to make it efficient for them, because, they don't have a lot of extra time to be looking at data. And so what can a teacher glean from these things that they don't already know about their students, and how can you use it? I think would be useful for them to make this really efficient for them.
Yes, and that was my point as well, Pete. Thank you. I wanted to make sure that teachers are adequately and sufficiently trained so that they feel comfortable and confident to use this data portal. And also that it is clearly communicated if it is a can do or a must do, if that is in any way now a performance expectation, or if that is really an add-on that they may or may not choose to leverage for the reasons that you've outlined.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for Chris? Right, so I think this is an end to the ED update.
It is.
Yasir, can I turn it over to you now for the chair as we head into the Finance Committee report?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Sam. All right. Frank is not here today, so I imagine, Chris, you're going to be giving us the overview.
Yes, and is Ryan with us? Has he been able to join us yet?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Let me pull
So
up the financials.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the financials for February 2022. Do I have a second?
I second. This is Sam.
All right. Chris and Ryan, go for it.
All right, I'm going to open up the report, Ryan, and if you want to give us a little background of what was shared at the Finance Committee.
Sure, absolutely. As we're bringing it up, these are our financials as of February. It's that second one there, Chris. There you go.
Yeah.
During the ED report, we received more of a real-time look at enrollment in ADA. I just want to remind you all, when we're preparing the financials, this is what was available at the time. So we have data through the close of month 6 for attendance. I know Dr. Jones's presentation showed that there's currently 380 students enrolled, but at the time of month 6 close, we had 382 at an average daily attendance percentage of 94%. Now, keep in mind, we've been playing catch up with ADA all year, letting the month end and then waiting for independent study contracts and stuff to come in after the fact. And then we go back in and recapture that afterwards. So I believe there's a good chance that that ADA percentage will be increased after independent study information becomes available through month 6.
And that already seems to be the indication from PowerSchool itself, which is our student information system that we draw from for attendance, which said it's already over 95.
Thanks. And so I did want to point out that we are still under enrolled by 44 students from the original budget. And that's what's driving, our revenue drops for this year. So nothing that we haven't discussed already, but I did want to point that out. And that impacts, the majority is in our local control funding formula, because our average daily attendance is how we're funded as a school, but it does also impact, some federal special education and state special education dollars. Now, we didn't have much of a change in revenue variances from last month to this month, but I did want to just remind us, LCFF, that's all ADA related. With the federal revenue, that's not 100% ADA related. Remember, we had about, I believe 33,000 was due to timing of federal stimulus spending. So it's not that we lost money, it's that it was the timing of when it was going to be spent. And then here down in our our grants, well, other local revenue, that was lower due to the fact that we couldn't operate a fully functioning nutrition program this year as we originally planned. So we carved out the revenue that we were going to be receiving through the paid meals. So that's why we're lower in other local. And our grants were higher by 36, and that's due to that I believe it's called the teleconnectivity grant that Dr. Jones and Biggie were discussing during the previous presentation. So that was positive for this budget this year. On the expense side, we're also showing a very similar amount to the previous month. However, things changed within the categories. So as we continue to realize savings in certificated salaries, we're seeing additional spend elsewhere. We're seeing additional costs for instructional aides this year, as well as for outsourced special education costs. Because remember, we originally planned for an in-house RSP SPED coordinator. We didn't fill that position in-house. We're outsourcing for it. And I believe that's working well for the school this year. And that's going to continue throughout the remainder of this school year. But that's what's driving the variances in our salaries. Other than that, there wasn't much of a change from the last presentation to this one. We're still forecasting net income of about $1,500.
So a break-even budget.
About a break-even budget. There's still some opportunity for some savings, but we don't want to realize those just yet.
Well, and I also think we have some, we unfortunately have some payments. We mentioned the overallocation penalties, and that will kick in come April. So we have April, May, and June, about an $8,500 cost times those 3 months that'll be in this year that we're not budgeted for. So that's to the negative. But yes, I think we have some things. We've managed to keep our legal fees lower than we thought they might go to. So that's going to help offset that. So I think we're still going to be in good shape come the end of the fiscal year in June.
Yeah, thanks for that. And on that note, Dr. Jones, Frank isn't here today, but what Frank had suggested that I do going forward is to break out that extraneous expense for this year through the overallocation penalty, so that we can still see what our true net income would be, our true operating net income would be, and then just show, what the impact of that, that overallocation cost is, so that we can clearly demonstrate that had it not been for that, we would have had, more favorable net income this year.
Okay.
Just if you want to scroll down, I'll quickly go over cash. So we ended the month of February with $2 million in the bank. And we had already received, back in January, we had already received all of our $940,000 receivable from the previous year. So all AR has been received. And to close out this fiscal year, we're looking at a forecasted cash balance of $1.3 million with $558,000 in accounts receivable at the end of June. Following pages, we have our notes to the financials that kind of summarize what I went over. We also have our income statement and balance sheet, as well as our check register. And these were all reviewed and discussed in the Finance Committee meeting. But as good stewards of public funds, it is important that all board members, review the check register. And if you have any questions, you can ask them now or at a later time if you have any questions regarding the payments that went out during the month of February.
All right. Are there any questions? Sam?
No questions.
Pete?
No questions.
Katrin?
No question.
All right, then all in favor to approve the financials for February 2022. Sam?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
That is a yes for me as well. Moving on to the preliminary budget discussion for the upcoming year.
Okay, we are still at the point where things are very preliminary when we talk about the budget. But I do want us to take a moment to be thinking about what lies ahead. We plan for April to be giving the board a sense of kind of a first pass at the budget. And there's a couple things that are particularly important that we need to be thinking about. We are looking at maintaining about the same level of people for next year. We have a couple different scenarios that we're working with. It's a little premature to put those out, but we're looking at probably the same. We have about 20 teachers and 8 instructional aides and 2 BIIs. We have 7 people or 6 and some change in the office. And then we also have our substitute teachers that are with us and have been with us quite a bit. They're our only line of defense of covering for people, and they've also been a huge part of our intervention programs as well. So that's we don't anticipate a drop in staff, but we're also not looking at huge increases. Things that are going to affect us in this budget, CalSTRS and CalPERS is going up, and that'll be calculated as an effect on the budget. We would like to seriously consider an increase in health benefits of about perhaps $50. We haven't changed health benefits in many years, and what we found is we crossed over for an individual who is on one of our basic plans. They are now having out of pocket for someone who's doing an individual, and that had not been the case in the past. We think with about a $50 increase on that, we can help a lot of people not have any out of pocket and still not break our bank. So that's one I think we're going to probably want to bake into this budget. We also always look at step and column, so folks get recognition for an additional year of working for us, and if they move across on getting additional educational units or maybe a master's or something like that. So that traditionally is about a 2.8% increase that folks have. And then the big thing is we've got to keep competitive with those around us. And I think we have to look at what we can do, even if it's a 1% increase of our salary scale, or maybe a 2% increase of our salary scale on top of the other things that are going to cost us. We want to we'll run those iterations and see what we're looking at and trying to make a break even. We know that we also have over allocation penalties is going to be a piece of it. And, that's to the tune of about $100,000 a year. We were able to spread it out across, a 3-year span, but it's still a painful amount that is in there. And so we have to do that. The good news is the budget in January had a 5.3% cost of living adjustment. So that will cover some of the pieces that we just talked about there. There is also, I was just at the CCSA conference last week for 2 days, and one of the things that I went to was talking about the budget, and the expectation is that COLA actually might increase from 5.3 to something a little higher. So that's good news. There does not seem to be a buzz that things are moving in the wrong direction in terms of funding for schools. we'll know more as we get to May, but we're not going to wait until then to at least kind of map out based on the January proposal where we think we'll be. So that's what's coming up. Expect more of that in April, and just want to know if there's any thoughts from board members with regard to budget in this preliminary sense.
Chris, I think we had a brief discussion about it on Saturday, but I will open it up. Sam?
Thanks, Chris. No questions, but I did want to go on record to support the idea that we really need to look at making or continuing to make salaries comparable for our staff. Appreciate that. That'll be part of it.
Pete?
Yeah, I guess I will just sing my song that I sing every year, which is ignored, that I think the overall, I think there should be an overall budget for increase, but increase should also be based on some sense of performance rather than just longevity, so that people can be rewarded for doing exceptional jobs.
Sam? I'm sorry, Katrin.
No further comments.
Okay, then moving on to the next item. I'd like to make a motion to approve the audit firm for 2021 and 2022. Is there a second?
I'll second.
That's from Pete. All right, Chris, go ahead.
All right. We asked for proposals from 3 different groups. And one of those was the group we had worked with previously, Eide Bailly. Second group was CLA, and a third group was Christy White and Associates. Of those 3, the services that were offered looked very similar across the board. They're all very reputable firms and hold a healthy market share in California. So there's no little firm here. These are all the major players. We found that the results of or the cost factor was a little different. 2 of them came in much higher than one of the others. And when we looked at it in the Finance Committee, basically there was kind of a discussion about, well, there's a benefit to maintaining with a similar the same group that you've been with. They might send different people, but there's a comfort level. But there was also a sense that the difference was great enough. So it was about a total, well, here I'll go ahead and pull up from the proposal from Eide Bailly, which is the group who we work with now, had a level of cost. This was the highest of all of them. And it basically looks at the audit costs and tax costs as well, and it spread it out over 3 years and where those costs would be. And the lower cost one was Christy White and Associates. I believe it was about page 15. Oops. So the cost was significantly different. And this is similar in pricing to what Eide Bailly was the previous year. So they had a big jump. And that's what kind of caught the attention of the Finance Committee. They asked me to reach out to Eide Bailly and see if there was any, like what had been the reason for this and for the big jump. And then also what had been, if there was any adjustments that could be made in our favor. And I got an answer back saying, this was to make sure we have the highest quality people, we pay this amount and it charge this amount, and the 15,000 that was the base fee, that's their lower limit, so they would not make any kind of changes on that at all. So with that, I am making a recommendation that we go with Christie White and Associates, because it's a significantly different amount, much more similar to what we had paid in previous years. We do recognize that there has been additional scope added, which is because of all the COVID type things and different plans that have to be reviewed and audited. So I don't know, it doesn't appear that that's been worked in here or added, but this is to our benefit. Ryan, would you share your thoughts on this as well?
Yeah, Chris, I actually, can you do me a favor and go back to the high quote real fast?
Sure.
I just saw something here that is worth thinking twice about. In my opinion, right, especially as we go into these times where there's additional testing and a lot of extra work needed during an audit, I feel, not looking at money, I just feel most comfortable working with an audit firm that understands your school. When going to a new one, they're going to have to relearn who you are. They're going to have to essentially audit the previous auditor's work. And we just kind of have to hope that partner agreed with the other firm's partner. But one thing that kind of just stood out to me, Chris, and I just wanted to point out, previously, we did not qualify for a single audit. That's what's driving the price here, is a single audit. So whenever you receive a certain amount of federal dollars, there has to be an increased level of testing around those programs. So when looking at this, I see that they're charging $15,000 for the audit. Now, the other thing that I would also point out is I wouldn't want to get into a multi-year agreement at this point in time, because things seem to be changing still. And it could be that, you know, it's really hard this year and not so hard in the previous years. I wouldn't want to get locked into a high rate. But what I noticed, Chris, is here it's saying $15,000 for the audit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see an asterisk. I see $15,000 for the cost. And if you go back to the Christie White one, and let me just say that I'm familiar with Christie White. I respect that firm, and I think that they would do a good job. But I believe that this is worth taking a second look at, just because Dr. Jones was highlighting the price. And I don't think we noticed that asterisk or looked at it too much. But while he was talking, I was reviewing it. And it says, if a federal single audit is required, an additional $4,500 will be added. I don't think we paid attention to that. And a single audit will be required, 100%, because of all the ESSER funds that you're receiving. So I think that you can reasonably assume, Dr. Jones, that this cost is going to be $9,000 plus the $4,500. So then that difference in price isn't as big. So just keep that in mind. I have no issue with your recommendation for Christie White. They're a great firm. They do a great job. But I did want to point that out, because if that was the driving factor, that I didn't notice that so much before. And it does look as though it's a little misleading, and it is going to cost at least $13,500 for the audit.
But an expenditure of more than $750,000 in federal funds, we're not anywhere close to that.
No, with all ESSER 2, ESSER 3, you have to take a look. So if you're not, then that's something to consider with Eide Bailly, because Eide Bailly is assuming that you will. I don't know if they took that into account.
Chris,
Just something to consider.
This was reviewed by the finance committee, right?
Yeah, but this was not brought up there.
I mean, I know we don't spend more than $750,000.
Not spend, receive.
Sorry, receive. Yes.
Okay, well, then you can stick with this firm. But I think that the firm that we're with, I think they're banking on the fact that you will, Chris. That's what I'm trying to say there. One is quoting based on the fact that you would be, and the other is saying that this is what it is without the federal audit.
Mhm.
When do we need to approve this, the auditor?
An audit firm needs to be selected by April 1st. So as I said, I think that Dr. Jones made a good recommendation with Christy White. I just wouldn't, if for whatever reason there's a misunderstanding with the price and Eide Bailly, if there's a misunderstanding here, I wouldn't want price to be the only reason you left the firm that you've, had such a great experience with.
All right.
So maybe, I'm sorry, Yasir, I didn't mean to cut you off. I've been in a situation similar to this before, where a board, approved the audit, like an audit firm, assuming that it could meet a certain price. Otherwise you could go with Christy White. I don't know if you want to do something like that.
What's the delta again? I'm sorry, between Eide Bailly and Christy White?
It was about 6,400.
Okay, so that's real money. All
I
right,
think it's
Chris.
about 2,500 if you assume a single audit in both. I think the delta is 2,500.
Right.
So 2,500.
If we get that a federal single audit, but that would be if we're in that year getting more or expending more than 750,000, and between ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 and federal funds, we're not exceeding that number.
$750,000. Yeah, I know. Chris, my thought on this is that, I'm okay to wait, if we can get if you want to think about it, but even if it's $2,500, that's like $2,500 in like a field trip or something else. I think it's worth it for the board to come back to. Do you want to call a special before April 1, or do you want to make a recommendation?
What I'd like to do, if the board
Can we discuss this and not have a private conversation between the two of you?
No, I'm not saying we're having a private conversation.
Well, it certainly seems like it. Let's go around the board and just have some questions and not just talk endlessly here.
No, we're not talking endlessly. I'm asking Chris for a recommendation. And once he gives us a recommendation, then we can discuss. How's that?
Insufficient, but go ahead.
So my thought was to have a recommendation for Christy White and Associates. I would confirm that that we are not going to fall under that 750,000 and move forward on that if in fact they can confirm that, and if not, have a fallback of Eide Bailly would be a suggestion and open for discussion.
So you're saying we would modify this to ratify Christy White, and if it is a misunderstanding, then you would go with Eide Bailly, and that would be the ratification. Is that what I'm hearing?
For a 1 year with Eide Bailly, as Ryan suggested.
Okay, thank you. All right, Sam.
Thanks. How many years have we been with Eide Bailly?
Ryan would know.
Well, that's a good question. With Eide Bailly, I think we've been with them under that name for about 4 years. However, prior to being called Eide Bailly, Vavrinick Trine Day and Company was our audit firm, and that's Eide Bailly absorbed Vavrinick Trine and Day. So essentially, we've been with this actual firm since the school started. And the thing that made it possible for us to keep the same audit firm for so long is that they would do in-house partner rotations. so that a fresh set of CPA eyes are on our financials every so many years.
Thanks. I think with that, I definitely lead towards accepting Chris's proposal for moving forward with Christy White with that caveat. But even with that, I think it might be of value to look at it with not just a fresh set of audit partner, but to consider a rotation of audit firm, as well as trying to meet some of the best practices that come out around some audit committee work. So I support the recommendation that's coming out.
Pete?
Thanks. I guess my first question is, how is it possible for this fairly substantially meaningful caveat not to have been noticed in the finance committee meeting? You don't have to answer that. Secondly, are we sure that the Eid-Bailly proposal absolutely states that it includes the single audit? So that's another question. And two, it seems if their description is not clear, because this one is very clear, it spells it out with and without, and the other one doesn't seem to have either or. That's just a poor submission, and for that reason alone, I would go with this firm. This firm being Christy White.
Katrin?
I am hearing correctly that there have been no issues or no dissatisfaction so far with this audit firm?
Is that right, Chris? That's the impression we're getting?
Yeah, we have not had any issues with the audit firm.
But also, Katrin, keep in mind, we've also never been audited before, so.
Yes. I support your recommendation, Chris. First, understanding the other proposal better. But if indeed that doesn't include the additional audit, I think it's beneficial to switch, but we should think about learning, onboarding, that learning curve that it takes to fully understand our organization, and if we have time for that or not. Honestly, I am not very well versed in these matters. I'm just wondering if there are any pressing deadlines and if I need to get up to speed at some point in time soon. So I guess just saying, recommending taking the learning curve into consideration.
Okay, so Chris, thank you for the recommendation. I just want to make sure I'm absolutely clear on what we're voting for. It sounds like Katrin and Sam are supportive of your recommendation, and Pete, you're still on the fence a little bit. Do you want to, or are you supportive of it, or would you? What are your thoughts? Can I just jump into your comments, concerns?
My thoughts are that we should just accept the proposals as given and not waste additional energy on circling back, because there's a lot of things that Chris needs to do. And if it's not clear, then that's just unfortunate for them, and take this initial recommendation and vote for this one.
Vote for this one, right? At a matter of $2,500, is that right? That's a delta.
The potential delta, yeah.
Potential
Or
delta.
$6,500.
Or $6,500.
Yeah.
I don't know, Pete. Pete, you want to make a motion to, I guess, no. You know what? Does anyone want to make a motion to amend the item, sorry, what is this? This item B3, item 6B3, to update it per Chris's recommendation to choose Christy, the Christy firm, and otherwise get more clarity from Eid-Bailly to proceed with them. I don't know if I said that even properly. Does anyone want to make that motion?
So this is Sam. So what I heard Chris say and what we could move would be to accept the proposal and to authorize engagement with Christy White unless we learn from Christy White that that we do have an obligation to include this single audit, which would then take it up to the 2,500 delta. And then what I heard Chris's recommendation to be was that if it does become that 2,500 delta, that he would then recommend that we remain with Eide Bailly for the next audit year for a single engagement year. Is that what you
That's
suggested,
exactly
Chris?
what I suggested.
But don't you need to ensure that if there's no single audit required, that Eide Bailly's cost would be lower?
Right. That's
Otherwise-
that's the factor, mitigating factor.
Yeah.
It's multiple audits then. Sorry, Chris, that's a question to you, I think. from
I'm
Peter.
not clear on what the question is.
I think what Pete's saying is Eide Bailly is also contingent on multiple audits. And if it's a single one,
Oh.
then it might be not as expensive,
Or it could be more expensive.
or could be more expensive, right? It's
Is
unclear.
that what you were saying, Pete?
Yeah, I guess some specific clarity on if it's a single audit, this is the price, and if it's not a single audit, then this is the price, because that apparently is not clear here.
I would also be okay with simplifying the motion to say approve Christy White and Associates.
Okay, so let's go back. Chris, what's the recommendation?
I'm fine with making the recommendation to approve Christy White and Associates as our audit firm.
Open up to another round, Sam.
I am supportive of that. I'm more comfortable with that than a conditional if then, because I do think that there's also value as long as your team, Chris, has the resource time to spend bringing up a new audit firm up to speed, because I think that the big resource pool is really on your team as they're doing the field work with you to make sure that they understand Goethe. As long as your team is ready to make that change, and it sounds like you are for, coming to this recommendation at the beginning, I'm comfortable with moving forward with Christy White. It sounds like it probably is time for us to consider making a change within that audit firm as well. So thank you. I'm supportive.
Pete,
I'm good.
Katrin,
Okay for me. This was
Okay.
getting a bit complicated in the end.
it was, and I also agree. It's always great to switch up audit firms every now and then. So, all right. All in favor to approve Christy White as the audit firm for 2021, 2022. Sam,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Katrin,
Yes.
and that is a yes for me as well. Moving on to the ratification of the E-rate consulting agreement, I'd like to make a motion. Is there a second?
Yes, here, if I may interject for just a quick second. I'm sorry, I do have a family obligation and I will need to bow out at this point in
Oh.
time.
All right, Katrin, thanks for letting us know. We still
course.
have quorum.
Yes.
All right, guys. Katrin, thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Okay, I've made the motion. Is there a second?
Second, this is Sam.
All right, go ahead, Chris.
Okay.
No one else can leave now. Everyone else is on the hook.
Okay. So this is on the ratification of E-rate consulting agreement.
Correct.
Okay. So this should be a very quick one. Sorry, I've got to open it up. This is an agreement that we already had to sign. So this is a ratification that we are basically just doing a flat fee, but it is an agreement. So I wanted to get it ratified by the board. It is within my limit and scope. But basically, we expect to be in the up to $100,000 range, so $1,000 flat fee, and it'd be a good problem to pay 2,000 because it means we're getting more money in through E-rate. But this is basically the service that gives us discounts for electronic access, particularly internet and other services that are covered through E-rate.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see this since it is in your authority, but that's fine. Sam,
No questions.
Pete. All right. Pete, that was no questions, right?
Correct. No
Okay,
question.
sorry. All right, all in favor? Sam,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
right. And that is a yes for me. Next item, I would like to make a motion to appoint Sam to attend the Zoom public lottery. Is there a second?
I need to know when it is before I can second that one.
That's Tuesday, April 5th. It's at 6 p.m.
Now we can go into discussion if there's.
It'll be by Zoom, so it is not a live attendance, but we do like to have a board member there.
We can't voluntold someone who's not here.
I was totally gonna tell Catherine, but I didn't know she was gonna ditch. That'd be so mean. But Sam, if you can't do it, I'll totally do it. Or Pete, if you want to.
I am available on the 5th at 6 p.m. That's fine. About how long does it take, Chris?
About an hour, maybe 90 minutes.
Is that Goethe time or is that real time?
Maybe wishful thinking, but yeah. But you don't need to you don't play a big role. We just want you to have.
Yeah, just witness. Right. Yeah.
All right. All right.
Thank you.
Is there a second though?
I'll second.
Oh, yay. All right. All in favor for Sam to attend the Zoom public lottery for our school. Sam,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
that is a yes for me as well. Next item, I'd like to make a motion to approve the non-binding agreement with Red Hook. Is there a second?
I second.
All right, Chris, go ahead. Pete, this is the meeting we had with the firm that would help us with facilities on Saturday that we met in person. So go ahead.
So the
Chris.
team came and met with us on Saturday. Basically, this is a group that does the upfront work of entitlement for finding a space. Their concept is that they purchase a property, they get all the entitlements for that property so that it can run a school, and then they lease it to us in a lease to own format. And the idea is within 3 to 7 years is the time frame that they want to be basically out of it, and they want us to buy it, or they sell it off to someone else who then becomes the landlord. So they are basically from beginning to end, soup to nuts, whatever you want to call it, the group that coordinates finding a property, making sure that that property is zoned appropriately, meeting with the people in the city to make sure that it happens. And most importantly, they put the upfront money into it. So the risk is on them until we're actually moving into the building. It's not free, it's a cost, and that cost is built into the overall piece that would be like a 25-year agreement. They do 25 and I think maybe 30 as well. But that's where the cost comes into it. And what this would be is an agreement for them to begin looking around on our behalf. They don't take on all clients. They are interested in us because we have a good reputation as a high-performing charter school. On the state levels, there's high and medium and low, and we're on high. They also are interested because we've had financials in good shape. We have money in the bank in our reserves. They are also interested in us because the board has been stable, and they were their ear to the ground with all the stuff, and they knew that we were having some struggles in years past with kind of board infighting, argument, whatever you want to call it. And they're very pleased with what they understand is happening at the board level now. And so those kind of three factors are put us in a different spot. If you recall, we talked to Stifel, and they do financing at a little lower rate. But Stifel said, we're just not at a point where we can make the leap into a property. We need to have the financing piece worked out in an initial group with a group like Red Hook. And the way I looked at it, and we talked about it on Saturday, is like when you're trying to buy a house and you don't have the full down payment, you use private mortgage insurance. And that's the piece that you want to get rid of immediately, because private mortgage insurance is expensive. But you do it because the assumption is you're going to be in better shape a year from now and 2 years from now and making more money at that time. We have the same belief in that through enrollment, and particularly once a building is in place, that drives enrollment, and enrollment drives enrollment, and more a new building drives enrollment, and that all makes the financial picture work. So that was the discussion on Saturday, and I would recommend that we sign a non-binding letter of intent with Red Hook. And by non-binding, the only piece that is binding is that we can't work with someone else during this 6-month period where they're going to be out looking for different folks. The only caveat to that is the property that is closest to us, which was the property previously where Ocean Charter was, is something we are we've been trying to see if that's a viable possibility, and we will continue with the real estate folks that we had already been doing that, and they understand that, and they're not interested in that as a purchase. So we'll take a look at that. But that's my recommendation, is that we do enter into this if the board is ready to make that leap of spending 6 months of really looking at properties and seeing if there's something that will work within our finances.
So I'd just like to point out a couple of things. Thank you, Chris. This is, again, non-binding. This is, I would compare it to working with a realtor, and in good faith, not working with 2 to 3 realtors. There is no risk to the organization at this point. This is not about terms of lease. This is not terms of financing. This is very much this is a letter of intent that they're going to start looking for properties in our interest. And it actually, when Chris says non-binding, it's totally non-binding. We can actually go find some other realtor or broker to find us properties as well. It's just done in good faith. Anyway, Chris, who are some of the schools that has worked with Red Hook? Ocean, you mentioned.
Well, yeah, the
city
shift
charter
that Ocean
schools.
did. Yeah, I can.
I
pull
mean,
up.
it's not a, yeah, it's in the, city charter schools, and Ocean, and then there's one in West Adams area, Vista, charter school in Santa Ana. So anyway, ultimately, this is not something that Chris even had to bring to the board because it was in his purview to explore, and it's an exploratory arrangement, I would say. But he did, which is fine. And it's back. Yeah, you skipped it.
What's that?
The schools that they go. There we go. Anyway, that being said, I will open it up. Sam. Oh, sorry, Sam, before. One more thing is Frank supports it. He wanted to pass along the message. So, Sam.
I don't have anything else to add. I appreciated their presentation the other day, and I'm supportive of you working with them.
Pete.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I think I think it's perfectly reasonable to take this step.
All right. Moving on to the vote. All in favor to for Chris to approve the letter of intent with Red Hook. Sam.
Yes.
Pete.
Yes.
That is a yes for me as well. Moving on to approval of the updated independent study policy. I'd like to make a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, go ahead, Chris.
Sure. If you recall, back in August, based on AB 135, we updated the policy for independent study, which was radically altered through the budget process and the trailer bills that went through that. There was a subsequent bill which we adjusted some of our processes internally, but we did not adjust it in the policy, and we need to do that. So this is based on AB 167, and it's the updates that relate to that. We need to provide both of the updates, the one we did in August and this one as well. It does shift the basic changes. I put in there the PDF version, but I also had the red line version in case anybody wanted to see each piece. But basically, this is it's just down to the details of how we support and track students who have more than 15 days of independent study, and how we're providing instruction for them, and also guiding them back into the system if they are staying out on independent study, that we're trying to bring them back into the system. And it's a little absurd, frankly, because most of the folks that we're dealing with who are over 15 days this year on independent study, it's because we've told them they can't come to school because of quarantine, or because for whether they've been infected or household infection or whatever it might be. And so we are following the things that are on here and making sure that we're going to be able to be audited and that it'll hold up to that. But these are the guidelines that we have to follow, and I ask that the board approve this policy that's based on AB 167.
Sam.
No questions.
Pete.
No questions.
Right, all in favor to approve the updated independent study policy? Sam,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes,
that is a yes for me. Moving on to calendar and topics for upcoming board meetings. I think we had spoken about in the meeting this Saturday to add strategic conversations about strategic planning, the strategic planning document, Chris, in April and May, and a final vote in June. I think that was the only thing to add to our calendar. I just wanted to bring Pete up to speed. Anything else, Sam?
Nothing else.
Pete?
not that I can think of.
All right, if there's nothing else, moving on, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
It was from Sam. All in favor, Sam?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
It is a yes from me. This meeting is adjourned at 8:03 p.m. Thank you everyone for joining, and Sam, congratulations on being